Monday, July 8th at 7 p.m. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Will you please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up, consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the consent agenda as presented, including approval of minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on June 10th, 2024, approval of the proposed accounts for payment, approval of budgetary receipts and expenditures for June 2024, approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes for June 27th, 2024, and excuse the absence of Lisa Pieper.
Okay, thank you, Doris. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jason, do you have a treasurer's report for us?
I do. So, as for the month of June, bills for June were $1,696,599.83. Payroll was $1,803,403.87, bringing grand total expenses to $3,500,003.70. Revenue, general fund revenue, was relatively healthy at $2,336,621.67. Keep in mind that as we approach June, July, and August, we're typically purchasing a lot of supplies and that sort of thing for the coming school year as well, so expenses are up. But as it stands right now, we are now 10 months through the budget cycle, or right at about 83%. And we've expended 76.19%. So that means we're roughly under 7.11% on budget authority. July and August remain in terms of the budget cycle. You'll also notice that we've not made the interfund borrower transfer that we approved in the last meeting yet. In the general fund account, you'll see that that money's still there. That's because we have not received pay app 23 or 24, the last two pay apps for the construction building. Construction of the new building. So when we get those pay apps, we'll then be able to look and determine what amount of money we need to transfer or be closer. So we're just waiting until we get those pay apps. The other factor that we may not know until the pay apps are in is the results from the geothermal federal funding program that we talked about at the Committee of the Whole meeting as well. So whatever rebate amount that we get back, just depending on the timing of that, we'll be able to factor that in. If it doesn't come back before we need to transfer the money, then we'll end up transferring money back, but it's all interfund borrowing, so it all works out. So those are just some updates for you. In general terms, the budget is in good condition, and we're underspent about 7% right now.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there any items on the consent agenda that a board member would like to remove for further discussion? All right, seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. Next up, information portion, board reports. The only one we have tonight is Committee of the Whole. Doris.
The Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting was held on Thursday, June 27th, 2024. The first thing on the agenda was Dr. Nielsen shared that the district is moving towards a single handbook with addendums for each building level, and she then highlighted some of the major changes. She also informed the board that the student handbook will be shared with families electronically this school year. She also talked about some changes of the classified staff handbook, including updates on dates and policy references, addition of a PTO option for staff that do not accrue vacation time, revisions to bereavement leave. It matches the negotiated agreement, addition of school cancellation pay for employees that do not earn sick leave, and wordsmithing in the coffee breaks and lunch breaks section. Then she also said there were just general updates to dates and policy references in the certificated staff. She then highlighted the changes to the substitute handbook, including revised start and end times to match the new school times, and added an attendance incentive. Mr. Alexander then provided board members with a summary of their proposed policy changes And I am not going to go over all of these because I believe we will be going over all of these very soon.
Lucky you.
And then he did talk, though, a little bit about substitute pay. He went over the incentive earlier in the meeting, and then he said he'd also like to increase substitute pay. And we ended with the superintendent update. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Doris. Next up is public forum citizens request for comments, and seeing that I did not receive somebody to request a comment, we will move on to discussion. We will start with the dyslexia update.
Before we do, just quickly, in public forum, even though we kind of moved.
Sure, no, you're fine.
I forgot to tell you. We have two new faces with us tonight, part of our administrative team. You recognize our veterans on the ends, Mrs. Timmerman and Mr. Hakey, but we have two new faces right in the middle that we'd like to welcome tonight. So Mr. Ford, if you'll stand up. Mr. Ford is the new elementary principal.
Nice to meet all of you. Excited to be in town. We are off and running on getting the new building up and going, so it's an exciting time. So be pleased to talk with any of you after the meeting here to just get acquainted. So nice to be here.
Welcome.
And we have Mr. Dylan Kindle, 912, assistant principal, and they had all kinds of forewarning to prepare for this, so.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'll talk to you after and just get acquainted, but glad to be back in the afters.
All right, welcome.
Okay.
All right, now we will move on to talk about the dyslexia update.
Okay, perfect. We are giving an update with the state passing the Dyslexia Reading Improvement Act. Part of that is making sure that the board has an update about where we are and where our students are. So during the 23-24 school year, we reported to the state an update with reading for the students in the district. Here's some information that we reported. So there were 179 students that were evaluated for a specific learning disability in reading K through 12. So this would be utilizing our school psychologist to do testing to see if students qualify for special education in the specific learning disability of reading. 84 of those students were determined eligible for special education for a specific learning disability in reading. Then on the title side, so that's special education side, on the title side and looking at all of the other students in the district, we look at two forms of assessment. So we utilize the MAP growth and we utilize MAP reading fluency, and we identify if they have not met benchmark. If they have not met benchmark and they do not qualify for special education, then they are placed on a Reading Improvement Act. And the Reading Improvement Plan goes in detail as to what do we need to do to help this child get back on track. So as we look at that, when we gave the assessments in the fall, 216 of our students qualified. The state wants to know how many of our students improved. 214 of the 216 students saw improvement from the fall. So that's wonderful. Yes, maybe with some of them we saw a little bit of improvement, but with some of them we saw major gains. And so those are the things that we continue to celebrate, and then we continue to look at where do we go with those students that need to improve. That is my update. Any questions that you have for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we get to move on to the fun portion of the meeting. Review of policies. We will start with review policy 5415, anti-bullying.
All right, and as we did in the committee of the whole meeting, I'll just remind you that in an effort to respect your time and the time that it's going to take to get through this, I'll be very quick on each one of these. These are not voting items tonight, just discussion items. So in the event that I'm moving too quick and there's something you want to stop and talk about, just interrupt me. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. So we don't have just discussion items tonight.
I'll let you just keep going through them.
Okay.
Sound good?
Perfect. All right, so the first one is review of policy 5415, anti-bullying policy. Just a reminder, this is state statute. Falls under 79-2-137 that says every school in the state will offer an anti-bullying policy in their school, and it must be reviewed annually. So it's a formality that we review this policy. It's tonight, it's there for you to review, next meeting we'll vote on. First reading of policy 1050, public access to records. So LB 43 significantly altered Nebraska's public records request laws. Nebraska residents are now entitled to the first 8 hours of staff time spent responding to records requests. Basically, as I said in the committee of the whole meeting, that's my time. Typically, I do all the response to public records requests. So now the first 4 hours, or the first 8 hours are free. So before that, we could charge for them. So that's a change as a result of LB 43.
Do you actually do the copying?
All of it, redacting.
Why is that?
Because I know it's done right then in the response, and everybody else is busy too, so.
Okay.
If it's something that's easy, I'll bring someone in on, but if it's not, then I have to do all the redacting, which means cross out names or block out things that would identify certain people. So if I do it
How
all.
many people requested public records last year?
We kept all the public requests, and I think we had 4 public requests last year. 6.4, first reading of policy 1102, recording of others. Schools do have the right to have consequences for parents that record conversations without informing teachers, administrators, or other people in the room. So this policy that we're asking you to adopt is a policy that protects our students, our parents, and ensures privacy and confidentiality of all students regarding recordings that people are not aware of.
Does that include board members?
It does. It would include board members. Anybody that falls under the umbrella of the school would be included in that. Item 6.5, first reading of policy 3130, purchasing. LB 287 imposed a new conflict of interest obligation on public employees. This change to policy makes clear that employees cannot contract on behalf of the district with themselves, family members, or their own businesses without prior board approval. And the dollar amounts in this policy are at the discretion of each board. So we basically have the same dollar amount that we would for other contracts as well. Policy 3140, contracting for services. LB 1300 imposes requirements on public bodies to ensure that no technology contracts are awarded to any scrutinized company, which basically means a company operated or owned by foreign adversaries. So that policy, or that LB 1300 means that it just ensures that no technology contracts are awarded to foreign adversaries. It's a cybersecurity policy more than anything. 6.7 is the first reading of policy 35771.1, meal charges. There was a lot of discussion about this in the legislature last year. LB 1329 prohibits any school from using debt collection agencies or collecting interest on fees for outstanding school lunch debt. Hasn't necessarily been much of a problem the last couple of years because we've had service groups help pay for those types of things and make donations as well. We've had a plethora of people donate money to help us and help people pay for meals for kids that may fall into debt services. So, but the legislature felt it needed to be put into law. Policy 4140, teacher training. This is a new policy. A result of LB 1329, actually relaxed several of the training requirements for school employees. Some statutes require a defined length of training required, such as 1 hour, but LB 1329 largely eliminates the definite training requirements and instead defers that to each board to decide the reasonable training lengths. So we've provided that training for you in the Spark. It was handed out at the last board meeting, but basically it lists every single training that teachers have to go through or school employees have to go through and what the recommended length of time is that we're asking you to adopt and approve. Policy 5006, option enrollment. LB 1029 changed aspects in Nebraska's option enrollment program. The policy, we've updated the policy to incorporate those changes. There we chose the option that each board, we chose the option that said the student would have to meet the 3 requirements in order for them to be able to opt into another school district, and removes us from the burden of being the established school district within that option request. So that policy has changed as well. First reading of policy 5008, student attendance. LB 1029 makes clear that mental as well as physical illness is a basis for excused student absences, and also makes change to Nebraska's attendance and truancy statutes, which are incorporated into the policy 5008.
So do they have to bring a note for a mental illness
They do.
as well? Is that just the same as with the physical illness?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And those absences can be excused with a note. Reading of policy 5101, student discipline. LB 43's First Freedom Act establishes the rights of students with respect to religious practices and the wearing of certain regalia, whether it be cultural or tribal. This is one that kind of gravitates a lot around the idea that if students have tribal regalia they want to wear at graduation or whatever the case may be, they have the ability to request to be able to wear that at graduation, and also that they have the right to practice certain religious practices during school hours, and we have to respect and honor that. So we would work with those students. Again, not a big change for us as a school district, from the simple fact that prior to this law, or change in law, this legislative bill, we had already been addressing a couple of those items anyway. So not a big change for us. Random drug testing, 5103.1. So remember that a year ago we had this discussion in several different meetings. It went into November, and at that time we just made the decision to carry on with the policy that was in place and then revisit it with suggestions that had come up over the course of those discussions. So essentially there are 3 options that the board has in front of them, and the majority vote determines which option happens. But you have an option to choose to keep the current policy that we have. On the basis of the discussion, we've made changes to that policy and revised it. That one was put in front of you last at the committee of the whole meeting, and it's in Spark. We can get you another copy if you want one. You can choose to adopt that revised policy with the changes that were made, or you can opt to eliminate the policy altogether. Up to you. In the revised policy, the key pieces that changed from the old policy. Students sign in at the beginning of their season, so if that's at the start of the school year, football for instance, or volleyball or cross country, they'll sign into the pool for their activity, whatever it is, and they're in the entire year. If it's a winter sports participant, they'll sign in at the start of winter sports or activities, and they're in for the entire year. In the spring activities, they sign in and they're in for the remainder of the year then. So that's the only way really we can do it, unless we require everybody to sign in at the start of the year. But that's the first change. So students sign in at the beginning of their season in the current school year they're in, and are in for the testing pool for the remainder of the school year. There's no opt-out option. Students are removed from the pool on the last day of school, so parent consent is not needed at the conclusion of the year. The testing period is over. And there are no randomized testing that will take place over the summer. Those are the 3 revisions that we talked about, that we did make to that policy, that we would be adopting.
So
Used to test over the summer?
It's never happened,
So how's it a change?
because it's in the policy. Now it's out of the policy.
So it was in the policy, but we never did it?
It was in the policy, but it was never done.
I see.
So in these changes, let's just take, for example, you've got a student that is going to play football in the fall, and that is the only sport they play. So they sign up in the fall. They could be tested in the spring, even though they're not participating in any sport or any extracurricular activity, band, speech, whatever that may be.
Correct.
And Jason, if they're going out for a sport and they don't sign up for that, then they can't play. Like, they have to sign up for that if they're doing a sport.
Correct. That's how the policy reads. Yep, any extracurricular activity, so sport or activity, yep. Any competitive activity, which, so basically, in Eric's example, if a student signs up to, and is gonna play football in the fall, they're in for the testing year the whole year. And then, let's say that they play football ends in the end of October. The next thing that they do in track, they're still in the randomized testing pool. But if they don't do anything else, they're still in the randomized testing pool, but the consequences are just, if they're not participating in anything, there's really no consequences that we can enforce in our policy. Because we're saying once you're in, it's an expectation as a participant in Beatrice Public School sports, the expectation is you stay in the whole year.
It's still better than what we did before. Everybody signed up, didn't they?
And they signed up at the start of their freshman year,
Freshman year, and then.
and they remained
Yeah.
in all the way through their senior year.
That's still an improvement, I think, in my opinion.
That's how it worked before.
I know this is still the first reading, and I still will go back to when we voted on this last winter, that I would vote to abandon the policy altogether. I believe the student handbook already takes care of disciplinary actions if there is suspected or use of drugs or other substances, I guess. So that's just my opinion. I know we're not voting today, but
Yeah, but that is my opinion too, because I've done the I've done the research, and it shows that it really doesn't work. And I have the evidence, I have the data, and I've shared some of this with you. That I think if you take a look at it, I think it'll be quite convincing. I can't imagine spending $1,500 for each positive test. And supposedly in the mission statement, it says the purpose of the policy is as follows: to provide for the health and safety of all students. It clearly doesn't. To undermine the effects of peer pressure and providing legitimate reason for students to refuse use of illegal drugs and or alcohol, all the evidence indicates that if it has an effect on this, it's minor and temporary. To identify students who use illegal drugs and or alcohol, it misses a whole bunch. And to encourage students who use illegal drugs or alcohol to participate in appropriate treatment programs, I need to see the evidence for that. I don't know about that. But when we have alternative programs that are effective, then it does not make sense to me to continue paying for something, even though it was all in goodwill and best intentions that we put the policy in place originally. And we have good people around town, community, business people, who've endorsed and helped and cooperated in all this. Unfortunately, we now know better. The evidence is in. And, even if we keep a policy, it's like in that mission statement, I'm not going to vote in favor of something which is not true. In one of my campaign things, I had a slogan of, one of them was real solutions for real problems. Well, this is a real problem. I want a real solution.
Jason, do you know, do we have the total cost that we spent the last school year for the random drug testing? That might be just a good piece to bring next month when we do vote on the policy, just to have that information.
I have some of those facts collected from what Jason shared on a sheet that I handed out.
It's roughly $50 a test for 10 students a month, so 500.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
500 a month, and then roughly 9 months, because we start right after Labor Day and end. May is the last testing date.
Okay, perfect.
I'd just like to say, Chuck, I appreciate your research on this, but I think there's a number out there that we don't know that is something we need to talk about. How many kids out there almost did drugs and then did not want that stigma of getting a positive test and then stood up to peer pressure and said no. I mean, the amount of money that I know you hear it all the time and maybe it gets repetitive, but if it saves one life from going down the path of drugs, then it's worth it. And I think we need to set a better example. I definitely will be voting for a policy in place, whether it's to keep the current or revised, but I just think that we're trying to be amongst the best in the nation here, and I think something needs to be put in place and stay in place. And I do respect you. You got some valid points there, and so does the president, but this is where I'm going to stand. I think we need to set a good example, and this policy does.
Having something in place that do address these kinds of issues. But if we can be a little bit more concrete about that, include that in policy, that reinforces, that might make a difference here. Because I fully recognize that just simply dropping it should not make it look like we don't care, because we definitely do.
I think I maybe would feel differently had we not kept a policy that we knew was not working year after year after year. And I guess I thought that last year when we voted to keep it, that some changes we made, those changes could not be made. So I probably will vote to continue, because I just think that it didn't work because we were testing everybody and continued to test everybody even when they weren't in any activities. It was nonsensical. So, and I don't think that, I think $1,500 that's a little, I guess I'd have to agree with him. And if it cost $1,500 and we stopped one kid, okay, I'm okay with that. I don't think that's a waste of resources in my mind.
Yeah, but if you look at it, I mean, 8 kids tested positive.
But that's
and-
because we were testing everybody.
Yeah, but not one of them got a suspension or anything, because clearly they weren't probably in a sport or.
That's what I'm saying. We made some changes that should have been made several years ago. We adopted a policy that wasn't working, but nobody brought it to the board's attention that it was not working, so we just kept doing it. That's what I'm unhappy about, is that, and I know that he will say they don't work, period, but I'd like to give it a chance to say, with these changes in testing students that are in activities, we were testing every student when you're a freshman, oh yeah, I'm gonna do something. But they didn't, and we still kept them on there till they were seniors. So.
And I will say I'm more comfortable with the revised policy. I think it makes more sense from a management standpoint. It's not as cumbersome as the other policy. I think the old policy, we kept it because we felt something needed to be in place. But I do like the revisions to it. I will not vote to opt out and eliminate the policy. I think it sends a very poor message to our public that we would do away with the drug policy when we know that we have issues within our own community. I just think the perception to the public is negative. So I will vote for a revised policy.
It also looks bad to the community though, that we're spending $12,000 a year for something we know.
We are spending $12,000. He just said it was like $4,500.
It's like $5,000 a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
but $4,500 a year for something we know is not doing anything to help. I mean, we are, like Eric said, we already have things in the handbook about this that kind of takes care of this issue.
I guess my question would be, do we know that for sure?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of data. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
data all over the place.
I have extensive documentation.
I understand that, but I think we can't tell what's in every person's mind. Did it deter one person, 10 people? We don't have the answer to that because we don't know what people are thinking. We don't know what our kids are thinking.
Well, I'm referring to surveys that were done over the last 10, 20 years, surveys of schools that accounted for 10,000 plus students. And there is, in these surveys, that there is virtually no indication that this stuff is working.
And were those surveys all done in our community?
No, they were not done in our
Well,
community.
here, I mean, this is
So it's not,
Gage County Comprehensive Juvenile Services that did this study and basically said that it's not doing anything to help. And this is from Gage County. So,
I will still vote for an revised policy.
Where were you looking at that about the Gage County? I didn't. Let's see. Oh, I see.
Okay, obviously this will
Okay.
come forward next month
Yep.
for final
Right.
vote. Your discussion.
Okay, so policy 5201, promotion and retention, again, as a result of changes in legislation. LB 771 allows a parent or guardian to require their student to retake a grade level if the parent or guardian satisfies the requirement outlined in the new law. Basically, keep in mind that the question is, can a parent require their student to be retained in the same grade during the 24-25 school year? So, no, next year, a parent can't come to us next year in the middle of the year and say, I want my student to retake 3rd grade, because the year won't have been completed. We'll have to finish the year, and then students in grades kindergarten through 4th grade, a parent may require their student to take a grade level if the student meets one of the following 3 criteria. 1, academic needs, 2, illness, or 3, excessive absenteeism. Students in grades 5 through 12 may only be retained by the parent due to excessive absenteeism. So the academic component is still left in the hands of the professionals. But discussion should happen either way, and I think that was the point of this legislation to begin with, is that if a parent wants to make the recommendation that their student retake the grade, there has to be solid data and rationale why they want that, not just they want to redshirt that student, for lack of a better term. So, and that helps get that discussion going with the school and the parent as well. First reading of policy 5205, graduation. LB 705 added a graduation requirement that that any graduating student complete the FAFSA or opt out of the FAFSA. A few years ago, the state made it mandatory that every graduating student complete the FAFSA. This year, they've reflected on that graduation requirement, and now there are some options for students to opt out that will be allowed by the high school principal. So there'll be discussion about that at the high school level. First reading of policy 6111, classroom environment. This is a new policy, and it incorporates 2 things. Just 1, orderly classroom environment, and 2, the change that requires, as a result of LB 1329, that requires each school board to adopt a policy that the school will only use the Gale Peters projection maps or orthograph projection maps in school. So,
I have a question. Do we even have a choice on that?
Do they have to be in the textbooks too?
no, we are waiting for guidance to see exactly what comes out in the requirements of textbooks. Because if they do, then that would be another unfunded mandate that we would have to make adjustments for. So, as of now, we can use projection, and we'll educate the teachers that if they project maps up on the projection screen, it'll have to be one of these 2 types of maps to use.
What's special about these 2 types?
I'll let Chuck explain it.
Yeah, I testified against this bill with the Education Committee, and I've put together the examples of what these maps look like, and you can look at them. I'll hand them around. I had them last month. But truly, this is an extremely unfortunate bill. It never should have passed.
We're the only state that has this requirement, aren't we?
I don't know.
According to Wikipedia, I don't know, but I looked it up and they said, I was trying to find information about it and they said Nebraska is the only state that's got this requirement.
I'm handing some of the stuff around right now. But in one of the models that is allowed, they put the distortions mostly in the oceans, so that if you are interested in a geography on voyages of discovery, it's unusable. And another correction is that the north, south, east, west gets distorted, so you can't count on directions being right. If you want equal areas of Africa and of Greenland and of Canada and Siberia, in the other form that they have, in that cylindrical type thing that I have some examples of, it's going to distort it in some other fashion, so that Africa is going to be twice as high as it is wide, more than what it should be. So if you want to have a road map, the scale of miles is going to be different whether you're going north, south, or east, west.
But what did the people that testified in favor of it, what did they say was the advantage of this?
Equal area, because Africa. In the Mercator projection, Africa being located close to the equator is shrunken in size at the expense of, say, Canada, of Antarctica, Greenland, Siberia. They're shown much larger than what they really are. So this person who brought this up was African American, and well-meaning. Unfortunately, the only map that can be the way that you can correctly show it is a globe. There's no way you can take, say, an orange peel an orange, and take that peel and flatten it out without distorting something.
So
That is the problem.
But why, I can't figure out why Nebraska's leading the charge on the size of Africa.
I believe, it's the formula that our unicameral is using to put together bills. It's the Christmas tree rule.
Excuse
The
me?
Christmas trees. The way that bills are passed these days is that all these legislators have these bills, I like this, I like this, I like this, and then they collect all these and build one big bill and manage to pass it. That really came to the forefront a year ago when we had all the obstruction difficulty. They couldn't pass a thing. But they're continuing to do that, and that's the reason this is in here, is because the legislature said, hey guy, yeah, we'll do it if you'll vote here. It's, again.
Is this person employed by this map company?
Not that I know of.
It just doesn't make any sense at all to me.
I agree, it truly doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me either. I recognize the reason, but the cure doesn't work.
So what was the original bill? What was the bill that this was
Original
attached to?
bill, yeah, well,
Because they have to be germane to the bill, so the bill had to be, or
yeah.
No, you're
It
right.
went through the Education Committee. And this was just a very simple bill, no more than a paragraph, that just said that, hey, the Mercator projection should not be used, and we have these two alternatives.
but what
You
was
must
the
use
bill that it was attached to? If it was a
Oh,
Christmas
the
tree.
overall education bill.
Oh,
In other words,
yeah.
everything else came with it. So in other words, hey, you got the dregs along with,
Like the
Stuff
lunch,
that
the
was
school
needed.
lunch thing was a part of it?
and if I
Because it was
look,
an
I've
education.
got
Mm-hmm.
somewhere maybe in the stuff that I handed around, I found out what is the bill that they finally assembled it into. I don't have that number in front of me right now. But it's a whole bunch of
So
provisions.
who was the sponsor of this bill?
Jill Wayne, yeah.
So your comment about germaneness. That's a critical term that has been lost in the legislature. Because now, it used to be that in order for a bill to be germane, it had to be about that specific topic. And it had, in order for it to be adopted onto another bill, those two bills had to have common synthesis or germaneness. That's gone away. And anymore, it's like they just take a bill and they attach it to another bill as long as it's under the same broad perspective or category, like education or agriculture, or they're just attaching them all, and Chuck's right, they get passed through as a Christmas tree bill with all of it on there.
And that's probably one of the things that happened when they put term limits in place. That part was lost.
Yeah, agreed. And unfortunately, the staff, who should be helping the legislators put things together and should have more continuity, should be smart enough to be able to say, hey, come on, let us work at this, let's help you. But that's not happening, unfortunately.
Great discussion. First reading of policy 6700 firearms, LB 1329 changed Nebraska's laws regarding firearms on school grounds. Again, some of these changes involve changes to the statute's wording. Others are more substantive, and allows certain schools to allow more firearms in schools, obviously in the hands of trained professionals and so forth. So the policy that we are recommending the adoption is probably of the more stricter nature, that only trained professionals or firearm people who are licensed to carry firearms will be able to do so. So that's in the policy.
I'll comment on that briefly. I've got friends who've been involved in competitive shooting in the sports way, and I can share with them our current policy and the revised policy is shown, and I got very positive response back, said, hey, we're doing a good job with this.
Thank you. The next one, policy 8240, is new as a result of LB 304. Requires each school district to disclose on its website the dues paid to any association or organization which the board is a member of, and fees paid by the board directly to lobbyists or lobbying firms. So we have two different groups that we are a part of, the Nebraska Association of School Boards and STANCE. STANCE doesn't typically charge fees, so those are posted on our website already as required. First reading of policy 8342, designated method of giving notice of meetings. LB 287 kind of eased the newspaper publication requirements for board meetings, just from the standpoint that in some communities across the state of Nebraska, there's not a weekly newspaper, or sometimes getting information into the newspaper in order to meet a timely situation was a little bit difficult. We're very fortunate that Beatrice Daily Sun, typically we don't have a problem with that. That will always be our newspaper of advertisement. We'll continue to do that. But there is some relaxation to the rules, that if we run into a timing situation like we did this year with the snowstorm, we can post in 3 different spots in the community, put it on our website that the meeting has moved due to these circumstances, and we will be okay by law. In the past, that was a part of the law that you really couldn't adjust to very much. But now, in the day and age of our social media and so forth, they're allowing a little bit of exception to that. So that's a good change to help boards out, especially in more remote areas in the state of Nebraska.
And I agree that making this more flexible is important. I've had multiple queries of how do I find out, where can I actually see when these meetings are held? And hey, the more we can do to get the word out, maybe we'll get more attendance.
Yeah, so thanks to you that are here tonight. The last policy is policy 8346, public participation at board meetings. So also in LB 43, it requires public comment be offered at every board meeting, including special meetings, work sessions, and so forth. That's not a change for us. We've always offered public comment at every board meeting, so we will continue to do that. This law really doesn't have any effect on how you as a board or we as a district have operated. So we've already been basically doing this, but now it's a legislative mandate, so we'll adopt the policy as presented.
I would really still like to see where it says members of the public will be permitted to speak at board meetings, that they need to state their name and address. Because up above in that policy, it says you can be admitted without that. And I think there could be confusion if we don't put that language in there.
Thank you.
We all know what we mean, but not everybody else does.
We will make that revision. Thank you for that catch. Okay. That ends the discussion portion. So
All right.
covers the policies.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, we are on the action portion. Start with reaffirm safe return plan. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 reaffirm the safe return plan.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet, I think, won that one. Dr. Nielsen.
Okay, at this point in time, we are not recommending any changes for the safe return plan. We are reaffirming it because we have not expended all of our ESSER 3 funds. So we have to have those expended by September 30th, and we will, and then we will not have to do this after we have expended all those funds.
Okay. Any further questions on this?
Just one last statement. Dr. Nielsen walked into my office today and said, this will be the last time we have to do this, so.
Darn.
All right, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. Next up, reaffirm policy 5415, anti-bullying. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 reaffirm policy 5415, anti-bullying.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Anything else to add to this, Jason?
No, this is the policy that we talked about in the hearing and basically just need to affirm it with your vote.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? Motion passes. All right, next up, reaffirm policy 5416, student fees, and appendix 5416. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 reaffirm policy 5416, student fees, and appendix 5416.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. I would assume same thing, nothing else to add to that
Same thing.
from the special hearing. All right, any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. Next up, reaffirm policy 6400, parental community involvement in schools. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 reaffirm 6400, parental community involvement in schools.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. And I would assume same thing from the special hearing. No other questions? Can I have your votes, please? Okay, motion passes. Next up, reaffirm policy 6410, Title I, parental and family engagement policy. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 reaffirm policy 6410, Title I, parental and family engagement policy.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. And I would assume same thing. No other comments? Any questions from the board? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? Motion passes. All right, next up, approval of agreement with NCECBBI for special education services. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agreement with NCECBVI for special education services for the 2024-25 school year.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. Mr. Alexander, would you like to?
I will, for the very purposes of explaining that abbreviation, which you all did very well, tracking those letters. This is the agreement we have with the Nebraska Center for Children who are blind or visually impaired. That's what that acronym stands for. So with a blind student in our district, this is a very important agreement that we hold to help us serve that student and support and deliver the services necessary for the IEP. So that's what that agreement is all about.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? Motion passes. All right, next up, purchase of oven for Beatrice High School. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the purchase of an oven from Cisco for the price of $45,958.40.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
That's an oven.
Second by Eric. Dr. Nielsen.
Yes, this is not the oven that you would put in your kitchen doors. So we need to replace the oven at the high school, and we brought this up at the June Committee of the Whole. We received 2 bids, and Cisco was the lowest bid, and it's also a mobile unit, so it can move when we need to move at the high school in the cafeteria, but we are asking that you approve the bid so that we can purchase it and get it here before August arrives, or by August.
Okay.
And this will be paid by the district or by?
This will be paid for by by our nutrition services account. So this will not be paid for by the district.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. Next up, approval of student and staff handbooks. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the 2024-2025 Student Handbook, 2024-2025 Classified Staff Handbook, 2024-2025 Certificated Staff Handbook, and the 2024-2025 Substitute Handbook.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric and Dr. Nielsen.
Okay, so there are no major changes from when you saw the handbooks. There are a couple points to note, though, that as we look at the changes to the PK-12 handbook, one, we are becoming more consistent and with practices with expectations, and we are looking at having the district practice section and then moving into the building addendums. Our lice practices have changed. We are looking at live lice versus nets. CDC recommends a live lice policy, and many other districts have a live lice policy as well. And then attendance practices, we are becoming more consistent PK-12 and meeting with secretaries and administrators to discuss those practices. One of the other things about the handbook, I do want to note that I have read that document multiple times, but I know that there are still grammatical errors. There are still subject-verb agreements, problems. So I will continue to go through and fix the grammatical pieces. There will be no content that will change. It will just be grammatical errors that I will continue to clean up so that when we publish it to the public, it is hopefully 90% accurate rather than maybe 75. So, and I know that Mr. Riedesel has been reading it through with a fine-tooth comb, and he's brought a lot of thought. So we are working on that, and we'll continue to improve those little pieces.
Yeah, and like interpreting that lice practices in particular really kind of made me scratch my head at
I
points.
know. Yes, yes. Changes to classified, we talked about this, but PTO for employees who do not accrue vacation time, so they would have access to paid sick leave, but the leave is not cumulative. They would have bereavement leave, it would match the negotiated agreement, and then school cancellations, we added this for employees that do not earn paid leave, that they would have a paid day on those days. Changes to certify was really just general items, dates, and some policy references, and changes to substitutes. I know that Mr. Alexander will get into this a little bit more, but dates and some policy references, start and end times, and then an attendance incentive as well. So those are the major changes that have taken place on the handbooks. Are there any questions? You've spent time looking through them.
All right, if there's no other questions, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. Next up, approval of substitute teacher pay. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve an increase in sub-teacher pay to $165 per day with a $150 stipend paid to a substitute that teaches 30 or more days per semester, and $100 for a paraeducator substitute with 30 or more days of substitute paraeducator support.
Okay, thank you, Doris. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Mr. Alexander.
So, as we talked about at the committee of the whole meeting, at that point, we hadn't really put a number on what we thought substitute teacher pay would be, what competitive number it would be for the coming year. We've done a little digging. We think $165 per day will put us in a competitive market in the surrounding area. There are obviously schools, Lincoln pays about 185 or more, so there are obviously schools paying more for substitute, but we figure in our area where we're competing for substitute teachers, this keeps us in the market. We also liked the idea, there are other incentives that schools are using as well to attract substitutes or paraeducator substitutes. And we liked the idea of trying to offer some sort of stipend for those substitutes that are loyal to Beatrice Public Schools and contribute 30 days of service or more with a $150 stipend. The question at the committee of the whole meeting, if you remember, was we had it set at $100, and it was, does it have to run through payroll? And the answer to that, as we went back, is yes, it does. So we increased it to $150, so at the end of the day, when that stipend is paid to that person, it's roughly about $100 once taxes and retirement and everything is taken out if they're on the retirement. So that's where we ended.
So the para would get like $50 then?
They'll get a $100 stipend, and once it goes through taxes, it'll probably be more like 75 because there won't be as much taxes as much tax taken out.
I haven't asked about this, but what is the policy currently if someone like does a long-term sub for someone who's out with a baby? Like, one of the concerns I always had expressed to me was that they had to go 30 days before there was an increase in pay, but very rarely does the school go 30 days in a row. There's always some kind of vacation. So I knew a substitute that would get to like day 28 and the teacher came back. Well, they did almost the whole thing. Is that still how the policy works?
No, we changed it last year.
Yeah, we changed the date, so right now, short term is 5 days, long term is 20.
Oh, okay.
It's always retroactive.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments for Jason on substitute pay? All right, seeing none, can I have your votes, please? Motion passes. All right, next up, discuss, consider, and take all necessary action with regard to approving the HVAC preventative maintenance and related service agreement for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 should and does hereby approve the selection of Prairie Mechanical to be the service provider for school facility HVAC preventative maintenance and related services for the 2024-25 year, beginning August 1st, 2024, and further approves and adopts the included resolution.
Okay, thank you, Doris. So a motion, do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Brandon. All right, Jason.
So as you recall, back in May, when things were slow and we had nothing to do, no, I'm just kidding, we decided it was a good idea to send out an RFP on our preventative maintenance program. We, simply put, we haven't done that in the 6 years that I've been here, so it was probably time that, and I don't know how many years before that, because we've always been with Johnson Controls. It was time for us to do that again and send out a request for proposals from HVAC companies. So we advertised, we put it in the paper, we sent it out to companies that Beatrice Public Schools is going to look at their preventative maintenance program. For reference, in the past, we've paid anywhere from $150,000 to $180,000 per year for that preventative maintenance program. We also know that going into next year with the elementary school, all of that equipment will be on a 1-year warranty. So we didn't necessarily need to include the elementary school. This was an opportunity for us to look at how much we spent on that, keep everybody honest, and find out if we could save a little money. As it turns out, when you dive into the mechanics of the HVAC system, it really comes down to two key pieces that make the entire system work. The first is the equipment. And the equipment means all those parts, pieces, belts, pulleys, motors, bearings, grease, zerks, filters, coils, and hoses that are the equipment. So the physical parts of the equipment. The second piece that makes the system work is the control system. And as you saw Missy get up and go over and push the button on the wall, that's the control system that talks to the computer that controls the entire district. It's called Medisys. So essentially, you have these two pieces that have to work together in order for everything to work. If the controls don't work, then the equipment's not going to work, and vice versa. If the equipment doesn't work, then the controls are going to tell you that software system's going to tell you and diagnose the problem. So after going through the RFP proposal, we had 3 companies that responded and said, we'd like to put in a bid. And at the end of the day, and I tried to put it together for you in format that you could understand. We had Prairie Mechanical, Facility Advocates, and Johnson Controls that all submitted a bid. And hopefully this helps explain and break out how we try to compare apples to apples. But Prairie Mechanical, to be honest, is a local company. They have technicians right here in Beatrice that would service, and they would do so at a much more efficient cost for the preventative maintenance program and also trip charge. So as it works, you pay for the preventative maintenance program, and that is like a biannual service that they come and check all your equipment in your entire district. Now, this particular quote does not include the elementary school again. Just for reference, this is just the middle school, the high school, and this building, because that's where the equipment is. So you can see the annual fee for that inspection process, and they do any repairs that they can. But the other 2 key factors about Prairie Mechanical is that they will allow us to order parts. They'll tell us what to order, we order it, and then we pay them the labor to fix it if it's broke. The other 2 don't do that. They pay for the ordering and the labor. But we're going to get charged for that ordering process as well. So the nice thing about Prairie is they're allowing us to take out the middleman, per se. Their service call was, regular time was $110 per service call, where the other 2 were $140 and $150, and they're coming from Lincoln or Omaha. Our service technician, for the most part, will be right here in Beatrice, so it'll be a much cheaper service call. After hours and weekends are also listed there, so you can see that. At the end of the day, also part of that factoring as to recommendation as to why I'm recommending Prairie is the response time. Prairie response time, they also serve other areas, so their response time was basically 2 hours. I think it'll be much less than that, but that gives them a 2-hour cushion in the event their technician is over at Fairbury or somewhere else fixing something. Then they said they could be there within 2 hours. The other 2, obviously being out of Omaha, we're going to be about 4 hours. So that time can be critical depending on what the situation is. So that's also a key reason. But you can see in the table how we did this. I want you to know that our school attorney, Derek Aldrich, was extremely helpful in all this process. He helped to design the RFP. He helped design all the information to be able to give back to you. And so we've done all this through the help of legal counsel as well. But essentially what I'm asking you to do tonight is authorize me to negotiate the preventative maintenance program with Prairie Mechanical, not to exceed the $82,000 quote that they provided. And then on the other side of things, the control side of things, is to continue to work with Johnson Controls, because they are the proprietary owners of the control system that we use, Medisys. So remember, those 2 things have to work together, and Johnson Controls, they kind of have the market on Beatrice Public Schools in regards to the control system, because they use it. So especially for the coming year as we start to bring on the elementary, they're installing the controls there. So it will help us to have preventative maintenance through Prairie Mechanical and Johnson Controls be in charge of the control system for another year. Overall, we still save about $70,000.
So do we need to also read this resolution?
We do not. We could, through the approval of this, we
The
are,
motion?
Or
Okay.
should it be another motion?
it's in the motion.
But I didn't read it.
The adopts
I mean,
the
I
included,
did, yeah.
yeah,
I didn't read that.
and further approves and adopts the included resolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did.
All right.
You read it.
But the public would have known what the figures are until you just said them.
Yeah, that's why I had
Okay.
it in my presentation.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on the motion for new HVAC preventive maintenance agreement?
I will make one more statement just in the event of clarifying for public understanding. In 23-24, with 6 school districts and 6 school buildings in the administration building, we paid $188,000 for this service contract. And that included controls as well, because it was all through Johnson Controls. In the coming year, with the elementary aside, it would roughly equate to about $110,000 with the preventative maintenance and the controls included. So, but I'm hoping, the other thing you have to understand is that you can tailor it down a little bit. You can tailor this package how you want to. So I'm looking at there and gonna negotiate with them and say, can we do this for this, or can we do this for this, and still have ourselves covered? So there's still a little bit of a negotiation process involved, but those are the bids of where they came in at.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. All right, next up, discuss, consider, and take all necessary action with regard to appropriation of funds for a real estate purchase from the district and authorizing a lease agreement with the Southeast Nebraska Education Agency for a new elementary school building and equipment and related matters. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 hereby ratifies, confirms, and reaffirms the lease dated June 1st, 2022 with the Southeast Nebraska Education Agency as more specifically provided in the attached resolution incorporated into this motion by reference.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. Jason, is there anything to add to this?
No, I just, for purposes of everyone understanding, this item is part of the agreement with the Southeast Nebraska Education Agency that the district agreed to adopt in resolution confirming a new 7-year lease period on the new elementary school. So every year we have to vote on this, reaffirming that lease proposal. And the resolution for the Board of Education to adopt the extended lease is included in the information, but the form was attached to the lease agreement. This is not a new document to the board. It's the same agreement we've had. It's just reaffirming the years moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? Motion passes. All right, next up, approval of addendum to first student contract. Do I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the addendum to the contract with First Student.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. Jason, do you have information for us?
Not really. It's pretty much all in the addendum, just the prices that we're going to be paying for routes this year. This is what First Student is contracting with us. Just a side note that it's up there for everybody to see. That's what's proposed right now. We've already enlisted about 500, and I think the number was 525 riders we've had signed up for the coming year. That number will change again, so that's the price that we'll pay. And if we have to add an additional route to help transport more students, then that obviously changes that price. But this is the addendum of what's First Student is asking for price next year to transport students.
Good. Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And motion passes. All right, last up, administrator's report.
Just a couple of quick things to update you on and remind you of. BPS was granted accreditation from the Department of Education. We just got our formal letter the end of last week. So what that basically means is that we met all the requirements of Rule 10 and Title 92 through the Department of Education. So we're granted accreditation by them. Dates for the opening ceremonies at Beatrice Elementary School, just so everybody has these in front of you. July 27th, we will be doing the first look donor tour starting at 9 a.m. That will last, we have time budgeted until noon for that. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Mason's Cornerstone ceremony. So just a reminder that July 27th day will be a day of celebration in the new elementary school. August 12th and 13th are sneak peek nights set up for families and students to get in different grade levels or on different nights. So that information will all be going out as well in the coming days, coming weeks. August 14th will be the grand opening ceremony at 6:30 p.m. So just so everybody has those in front of you, those are all in stone now, and we just have to start making sure we get everything planned out. The last thing that I have for you is we were notified by the U.S. Department of Transportation that our popsicle stick was drawn for a random inspection, so they will be here tomorrow to do a random inspection of our transportation process, which basically will just be, for us, it's just our activities. And then I don't know if they inspect first student or not, but they'll be doing a random inspection of our transportation systems, our bus routes, our activity routes. So that's happening tomorrow.
All right, anything else for the good of the cause?
That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Notification of next meeting. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be August 12th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the Administration Building. There will not be a Committee of the Whole meeting in July. An agenda for the meeting, which shall be kept continually current, is readily available for public inspection at the Superintendent's office during normal business hours. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
A motion, a second? Your votes, please. We are adjourned. Thank you.
That's quick.
That was really good for all those policies.
A lot of policies.
Yeah. Jackie, do you keep or finish? What is it? Finish, right?